I'm Santosh Narona. I'm from the Department of Chemical Engineering. And I'm going to split this into two parts because of lack of time now. What I'll talk about is innovation, especially from a healthcare perspective, and talk about some basic aspects of this today. And in any case, tomorrow we're meeting again, and tomorrow I'll share various perspectives on a case study which we've been working on through the Tata Center on innovation for cervical cancer screening in particular. So when one talks about innovation, and of course the whole focus of a Tata Center is innovation, you've got to identify the scale at which you're going to innovate. And if I were to flip this and ask you and identify things which are grand innovations, can you name even a single thing which you think is a game-changing innovation on your own? So can I get somebody in the audience to react to what is called a blue ocean innovation, where it happens at such a large scale that it totally changes the way in which one functions? More specifically, the smartphone itself was something which changed the way society behaved, right? And look at where we are at now with Facebook and other platforms like that. So that's fundamentally a change which comes about once in a while. Okay, that kind of innovation is hard to do for most of us. It requires a scale of both ideation and investment which is large. And therefore, what we mostly do is point number one out there, which is incremental innovation. If you look at most of the thesis that you produced, it's incremental learning over and above, okay, the things that are already learned. We're looking at variations of a small scale typically. So as a result, when we look at what occurs out of such efforts, for the most part, we are innovating with very little value being generated for that innovation. Most of our theses go nowhere in terms of innovations. Or alternately, we are innovating and not necessarily providing value to that stakeholder who finally has to deal with your innovation. So if you're innovating, hopefully you're doing something for somebody in society. And then the question is, while something may be of academic use, does that stakeholder in society agree with you and find value in what you've innovated? And the truth is, in most cases, there's no outcome. So fundamentally, you want innovation and value for stakeholders. So since I told you that I'm from the healthcare domain and I look after projects in the healthcare sector, again, flip this and ask you, where do you think one can innovate in healthcare? So I just want a few ideas out there from where one can go with innovation in healthcare. Where would you want innovation? What kinds of innovation would you want? Okay, where? No, that's okay. That's you hooking up. So the point being made was continuous vital signs monitoring. But the question is, who needs that and where is that needed in terms of location? Do I need that at home? Do I need that in a hospital? Everywhere. Okay. So if you think about it, where do you go to get vital signs monitoring currently? Where can you find a solution for continuous monitoring of your vital signs? In the emergency room. Okay, so that functionality that you just asked for is available to you only in the most specialized unit, which is a casualty section or an emergency section in a typically a tertiary care hospital, not even a small clinic. Okay, so that monitoring functionality that you just wanted, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, several watch companies have just and phone companies have just announced online BP monitoring solutions now on a watch. So the home monitoring aspect is actually feasibility. But where else? What else are you going to innovate? You just want monitoring? Should a healthcare system only worry about monitoring of vital signs? What do you mean by care? So be more specific. Okay, so the previous talk was on Jaggery. You want insulin? Right? So you want dosing of insulin. Again, you're getting at home care in some ways. You want a portable solution which is smart in delivering insulin. Is that right? As and when needed. So what else? Where else do you want innovation or change in how the healthcare system behaves? Okay. So basically, you're looking at improving hygiene and water purity. What else? Is that enough? Okay, but notice that you're talking about things probably in your immediate vicinity. Do we need more vaccines? Do we need more awareness material? Do we need more hospitals? Do we need different kinds of hospitals? Okay, you have all heard of Arvind Eye Care or Narayana Hridayalaya in Bangalore. What's fun about Narayana Hridayalaya? Why did it come up as an alternative way of getting cardiac care? And what's so unique about the way that hospital operates? Okay, that's a hospital which essentially used manufacturing practices and brought in the assembly line concept into how to run a hospital. So if you walk into the operation theater, what you'll find is that essentially nurses have been upgraded into doing certain procedures which otherwise in other hospitals are done by doctors. And in effect, they have innovated more in a process sense than in a product sense. And they essentially have a very quick turnaround of cases as they come in. Okay? So much so that the expert surgeon pretty much has only one task to do, which is to execute that bypass procedure, which involves stitching, okay, a blood vessel as a graft onto an artery. And everything else, including opening up the patient, anesthesia, everything else is done by less expert people, but is done very efficiently by people who have been upskilled to execute this. The other thing you'll realize is you're going in there for just heart care. You're not going in there for eye care, you're not going in there for anything else. And therefore, the efficiency that comes about in dealing with one condition and therefore instrumenting yourself up with that one condition and buying things at scale and therefore having economies of scale is what they were innovated at. Okay? So unfortunately, that innovation is not necessarily innovation of a technical nature. It's more of a business modeling nature. It's more of a process, okay, inventory, maintenance and logistics kind of optimization that they've done. Okay, what else? Are we saying there's nothing else that's innovative in what we've done in India in terms of healthcare? Okay. So notice that a full healthcare system actually involves all of this. Okay. If you think about it, okay, we talk about how we have, okay, a large population. We talk about how we have a young population. We talk about how we have an economy which is booming. This is exactly what happened to the United States in the 1970s, where they suddenly had a population boom and the economy expanded. Okay. And they were at a position where 5% of their GDP was being spent on healthcare. Now that value is important because 25, 30 years later, the US now spends 25% of its GDP on healthcare. So what happened in the 25 years? The young population became old and the old population needed healthcare. So how do you provide healthcare for such a large population which is old? You needed innovation at all levels, which is investments in assessment primarily, trying to understand what diseases were going to occur. And if you look at what's changed between 1975 and now 2015, if you look at data from 2015, you're looking at a different set of diseases, okay, being important in the US. Once upon a time, it was infectious disease. Now it's cancer. Now it's cardiac care. Now it's lung disease. Okay. So, and in fact, there are some curiosities there. You're seeing depression being a major killer of people in the US. In fact, mental health as a disease. So the point is, if you assess and figure out where intervention is needed, then you get a chance to figure out where your challenges are and where you might innovate. So assessment and prevention in a country like India are in fact important. So when you talked about monitoring of vital signs, I need to assess and monitor so that I can prevent your condition escalating. And that's a much better thing to invest in rather than trying to create more hospitals and train more doctors, because we just cannot cope with the population the size we have. You cannot train enough cardiac specialists, you cannot train enough cancer specialists in this country. But notice therefore that for the typical Indian, the engagement with the healthcare system is only at one step in this entire list. We deal with hospitals where, okay, the emergency room. We have a major problem. The first contact with the doctor for us is typically the emergency room. So at the intervention level. In fact, we don't even have the capabilities of having you recover efficiently because we need the beds. So you're sent home early typically. So rehabilitation, we don't have that. We don't have an insurance framework. So there's no innovation on the insurance front as well. Now at one level, all of this will sound very depressing. That our system is actually focused tightly on one level of just having quality hospitals, quality doctors in these hospitals, and trying to deal with all healthcare aspects in these hospitals. But the fact is, the other way to look at this is the other segments allow for opportunities. You have opportunities in the other segments, and it's a question now of how to innovate and try to essentially take benefit of the possibilities in these other segments. So if I were to just throw up a quick list of things that you can innovate, there are diagnostics, and that's the easy thing. Most of us are engineers. If I ask you, what can you build? The first thing you'll talk about is, okay, the monitoring of some vital sign. Okay, and you can go from there into more sophisticated diagnostics, including what's currently being done of what's in your genes and what might therefore be your risk of a particular disease. And that's where we are going with genomics and other types of technologies coming about, especially from a biotech perspective. Where most of the innovation happens in the country is in processes and services. We have always been historically good at this, and we continue to innovate. So most of the new innovations and new startups in the country are in this domain. Okay, and we do not have enough innovation in the therapeutics. We are not creating new drugs. We are not looking at gene therapy. We are not looking, for that matter, we are not even trying to characterize systematically what are Indian native conditions of disease. For example, you will not find oral cancer patients in the US. You'll find enough of them in Maharashtra. In fact, you'll find more of them in Maharashtra than all of North America. Why? Because we chew tobacco. Okay? So therefore, you don't have anybody in the US systematically studying the effects of chewing tobacco, with the resultant that there's no diagnostics available to easily diagnose oral cancer. It's an Indian problem. Similarly, if you go into the Northeast, there are specific types of cancer, intestinal cancer. Yeah, there are specific types of cancer which result in the Northeast, which are unique to the genetics of people in the Northeast and to the diets of people in the Northeast, and there's no study of that. So wherever I put this issue of there's no study of something, I flip that and say there's an academic opportunity for us to do research and ultimately innovate and come up with some solution there, whether it be a diagnostic or a therapy. So the innovation that best that we have come up with is to take something like an Arvind Eye Care, which does things assembly line, and we have essentially migrated to now scaling these up into a health city concept. There's a health city in Dubai, but you're probably going to be surprised that Devi Shetty has actually gone and placed a hospital just outside the United States in the Caribbean. Why? Because for those people who have heart trouble in the US, who have to pay very high levels of finance to try to get this taken care of, especially if you don't have insurance, then what's the best thing you can do? You can take a vacation into the Caribbean. Okay, when you're done with your vacation, you get your heart fixed, and then you fly back to the US. Okay, so you're just outside US limits, so you don't pay the taxes that you would in the US. So that's the level of financial innovation we've thought of, and we're good at that sort of thing, but the question is where the technology is going to come from, and where does one go? A simple thought, and maybe I won't push this too far because we're actually running short of time, but the innovation for a country like ours primarily has to happen in both awareness and basically screening the population. Okay, one of the projects we've worked on is on understanding how to deal with pathology in the country. And it's a very scary thought to realize that there are probably about 1,000 competent pathologists in the country. Why does this matter? Why does the number matter? 1,000, because think about it. If you go to a hospital with a major problem and you need a pathologist to review your data, remember that based on the pathologist's report, the surgeon is then going to decide whether to operate on you or not. Okay, and if there are 1,000 competent people coming up with a diagnosis, if you've got the wrong pathologist, you are in trouble. So the question then is, how do you scale? And either you train more pathologists and you innovate in the training of pathologists, or you come up with technology to replace pathologists. How do you replace pathologists? What kinds of technology would replace a pathologist? What is the need here? Well, the analysis of report assumes that somebody has already looked at it and come up with some findings. So who's going to come up with findings? I'm not sure if you're going down the road of saying machine learning and data analytics. Maybe, okay, but there's a danger there, right? So one of the things we confront, for example, is as we try to bring in this level of innovation where we bring in machine learning and so on, is where are the experts? If there are no experts, then how do we trust that the software is actually telling us the right thing? Because you want an expert to validate what software tells you, right? So conversely, if I just create a machine learning tool and I place it in the hands of a novice, or somebody relatively illiterate, there's a danger there. There's a huge danger there, especially in the healthcare domain. So how do you then come up with innovation which is smart, which works around the fact that if you give it to the wrong person, the technology actually backfires on you. And so you now have an issue where you have to think about technology in a social context and worry about who's accessing this technology and how that technology finally creates some kind of a workflow which benefits, obviously, some person on the ground, okay, in terms of a nurse, a doctor, an expert at the other end, and hospitals which are otherwise going to be bypassed must not feel left out, so you must include hospitals in your plan of things. And at the end of it all, who is all of this for? A patient. So how does the patient benefit? Okay, by creation of a technology. All of that actually forces you to think hard. We have innovated quite a bit in the healthcare domain, and I'm not flashing slides because that's simply going to take time. But the model of what we have learned is that it's important to understand a problem in its entirety and not simply say that, okay, I think this needs a new sensor or a new gadget or a new device. You've got to understand how the technology plugs in into society. And that plugging into society sometimes can be surprising. Maybe it's about creating awareness, maybe it's about creating learning. Sometimes the specialist has to learn something new to use your new technology. Sometimes the person on the ground has to learn something new, okay, to use your technology. And sometimes you've got to learn about what it takes to deliver a solution to the field. And I'll give you one example. Okay. The simple notion that you could take take a young girl in a village, okay, maybe the Panchayat chief's daughter, give her a bag of medicines, give her a phone, and ask her to call a call center the moment somebody in that village is sick. Now that's technology at its own level. And this was tried in Rajasthan, like Piramal Foundation. And it failed. It failed badly. Because on the one hand, the phone is good, it's a smartphone. Okay, it can even allow you to Skype and showcase the patient's symptoms and so on. The bag of medicines is perfect. The right medicines are available to her to deal with any medical condition. And yet the service fails. Why do you think the service fails? Well, there's network there. But she was the chief's daughter. So how does a person of the wrong caste approach the chief's daughter? So this has nothing to do with technology. So you can create a technology, but if you put it in the wrong hands, it fails. Okay? It so turns out that the first time the girl got something wrong as a diagnosis, as a turnaround of care, there was somebody else who was put out of a job when this technology was created, when this girl was given a phone. Who was that? There was a quack who was put out of a job. The moment the girl gets something wrong, the quack stands up and tells the foreman or the chief that he's doing something stupid. And then this girl is put out of business. Now, how will technology deal with this? Okay? You have to account for this in creating a solution and make sure that everybody in the loop, including the quack, is incentivized into being part of the whole process. So everyone has to be in the loop because you cannot afford to have people fighting against your innovation. So that's an example ultimately of what needs to be solved. So maybe I'll come to this point a little later, tomorrow as we do this. But at the core of it, what we look for is a need. Okay, so one of the things we have learned is that it's very critical to spend more time asking what is the problem that needs solving than asking what is the solution that needs solving. And actually that's something important because if you think about how we come into this business of innovation, as academics, we have gone through a training system through college and later on as well, which assumes that we will learn from books, from mentors, and that there's a solution waiting for every exam question that's ever asked of us. Which means obviously we are not trained to handle the unknown. Okay? So sometimes asking what is the problem itself, rather than asking what is the solution to a given problem, is the challenge for most of us. So what is the problem we are going to work on? So what I'm putting up here is actually what it takes to find a need. What are the critical elements of finding a need? How to draft all of these things into a very crisp statement, into a very crisp paragraph is the challenge. In fact, it's probably 90% of the challenge. If you have found the right need, it's possible to then ideate and ask what's the relevant technological solution to solve that need. Okay? So what I'm going to do tomorrow then is actually to take up this case study of cervical cancer, which is something we worked on for the last 4 years, and go through this process of ideating on the need of it. Okay, what are potential solutions for this? What does it take for you to innovate and build a solution here on a campus like ours? What does it take for you to take the solution out and test it out? What does it take for you to finance the solution and take it to market? And how can you do this sitting as an academic in an academic environment? So maybe we'll spend time on that tomorrow. So I'll stop here because we're totally short of time, and I know you have to trek across to make it to the other lab. So thanks.